Welcome to the channel. Welcome back to Kush Culture. I am the Pharaohtist, and welcome back to the channel. This live today is going to be part 2 of Moses and Akhenaten. Are they one and the same? So stick around, enjoy the video, like and subscribe, leave a comment, leave an email, and we'll get back to you. We'll be starting briefly. Okay, guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the channel. Um, like I said earlier, we're gonna be doing a part two. There's gonna be three parts to this video. This is the second part of this series of Moses and Akhenaten being one and the same. This is part two, and the last part is gonna be a summary of everything. Because I didn't want to put everything into these two videos because I want people to do research and find out for themselves. What we're trying to do here in this community that I'm part of is try to get the truth out. I mean, we're living in 2023. People still confused about what is, so doing these lives with the community I'm part of, we're going to have to make a decision, Like they say, you got to make a decision. You got to decide what side you're going to be on. That way we all know. But our goal is to put the truth out so there's no misunderstandings on what is and who we are and where we come from. So, it's time out. Too much stuff is going on. We've been lied to for years. We can't keep doing this. So I want to go ahead and introduce this source here. This is one of my sources of one of the books I'm reading. And it says Moses and Akhenaten, the secret history of Egypt at the time of the Exodus. So myself, I'm not really here to convince anyone either way. And I'm not really a historian. My degree is not in history. And I hated history when I was growing up in school. But as I got older and I started being around other people who study a lot, I got into it and I started studying for myself and researching for myself and finding out more and more about who I am, where we come from, and where we're going. So I got knee deep in it. So now I got thousands of books. I read a lot, and now here in 2023, I was supposed to have been put videos out, but I didn't do it because I wanted to get my videos right. I want to get my computer right. I want to get my graphics. I want to do a little bit more research. So when 2023 came, as you can see, I'm dropping videos because I want to be prepared and I don't want to mislead anyone. But I do want to come out and have the sources, the resources. As you can see, this is one of the books here that we're going to go into. And I'm going to show you another book and some other resource to make my claim, a valid claim. So enjoy the video. If you have any questions or concerns, leave a comment down below. Like the video, leave me an email, and I'll get back to you. So we're going to get into the video. I'm not going to make it too long, hopefully, but I will be strong. So we're going to go ahead and get into this now. Okay. Now this is, as you can see, Moses and Akhenaten, the secret history in Egypt of the time of the Exodus. So what prompted me to do a video or even study, not even do a video, just study. I always believed, now I enjoy the story of Moses. But every time I read that story, it always did something to me. And so when I also read about Akhenaten, I almost got the same feeling, but Akhenaten is my man. Everybody talks about him and call him a heretic and stuff like that because he is the founder of monotheism. But at the end of the day, if you think about it, a lot of Christians believe in there's only one God too. So, I mean, what makes him a heretic if most people believe there's only one God? And he allowed, to me, Akhenaten allowed people to look up to the sun, the power of the Most High, and knowing the image and the power behind the sun. Not sun worship, but the power behind it. The moon. The reason why the sun and the moon comes up and does the same thing every day. There's a power, there's a power behind that. And to me, when I started studying about Akhenaten, my name is Nefertari Aten Ra. That's my name. I'm the Pharaohist. My name is Nefertari Aten Ra. And I didn't get the Ra until 3 years after I accepted the fact that I am who I am. And I put the Ra on later, but I got my name from my father. My name is Nefertari Aten Ra. So that's what it is. And so that's why this is a passion for me. Because I believe they're one and the same. And we're going to prove it today. Well, we're gonna try to improve it today. So let's get into it. Now here we're gonna have a chronology of the 18th dynasty and the 19th dynasty. Okay, I'm not going to read everything on the side of here because I got another book that I want you to see. And let me just show you this book real quick. Okay, let me go up to the title of this book. Now, this book I got when I was in Dalton, Georgia. I was at a truck stop. I did a delivery, I think Wednesday. And so I went inside to grab something to eat, and I saw this book in there on my way out, and it was like, man, I couldn't believe it. This book, Rose Book of Bible charts, maps, and timelines. This was ideal. So when I saw the book, I went ahead and just grabbed it because it was right up my alley on what I was already trying to accomplish. So there was two books there. This is by Rose Publishing, and the second one was Rose Chronological Guide to the Bible. And so we're going to go into this book a little bit more. Now, to talk about Moses, you have to go into the beginning when we have Abraham and Joseph. As you can see, the chosen family from Abraham and Joseph was 1200 to 1800 BC. Where you talk about Abraham and Sarah, Joseph in Egypt, the story of Job, covenants, and in Bible. So we're not going to read everything, but I'm going to read some of it because we have to have a starting point. So, of course, you know Sarah and Abraham. Let me just go ahead and read Genesis 12 through 24, where it says Abraham. I'm sorry, I don't want to do too much. I'm so sorry about that. All right, let me slow down. Let me see where I want to start at. Let me start over here on. I'm gonna start here with Jacob's family, Genesis 25 through 26. It says after Abraham and Sarah's death, the biblical narrative turns to Isaac's twin sons, Jacob and Esau. Now, Jacob and Esau are the twins, that Isaac had. And you'll hear a lot of the Hebrew Israelites always talk about Jacob and Esau. Jacob is supposed to be us, and Esau is supposed to be the Gentiles, the white man, I guess. So he's supposed to be Esau. When they're twin brothers, and one came out, Jacob and Esau. One came out and with red and hair all over. So you'll hear the stories about Jacob and Esau, and this is where they get the story from. But particularly Jacob. At birth, Jacob was given his name, translated as he grasped on the heel. In ancient Hebrew, an ancient Hebrew expression that meant he deceives. I'm over here reading now, so just so you can have an idea. Hopefully you can see this and make sure we're good. Okay. Expression that meant he deceives. Generations 25 to 26. Later in Jacob's life, God changed his name to Israel, which means struggles with God. That's in Genesis 32, verse 28. Both names suggest a man and also a family in a tug of war with God and each other. Okay, so Jacob and Esau always struggled with each other. One came out before the other one. The other one was mad and tried to pull his heels back, and that's the reason why you had to struggle to this day. If the Israelites tell that story to this day, that's the reason why we are separate from everyone else. That's why Jacob and Esau, the white man and the black people, don't get along. It's because of Jacob and Esau. This is where the story comes from. So it says the stories in the sections of Genesis details how God's chosen family struggled. They struggled with God. Jacob did so literally in Genesis 32. They struggled with each other, deceiving, fearing, and betraying. Some were victims, others were victimizers, and some were both. Most times they focus on their own survival status and power. For example, Jacob and his mother Rebekah trick an aged and blind Isaac into giving Jacob the blessing that belonged to Esau. That's in Genesis 27, Genesis 27, 1 through 45. Jacob fled when Esau vowed revenge. He would be 20 years before their brothers would ever meet each other again. Jacob was fooled by Laban, and this is the story in the book with Jacob. He flees his mother. They deceive they deceive each other. Actually, they tricked his father because he was blind, so they deceived him to get the blessing over his son Esau. When Esau came in the house and found out his brother got the blessing, and of course Esau was mad, and then Esau was going to kill his brother, so his mother told him he had to flee. So that's the reason why Jacob took off, and he wound up to the place where his uncle was, and his uncle's name was Laban, and who tricked him into marrying Leah. Leah was the sister of Rachel. Rachel is the wife of Jacob, which is his second wife. Jacob didn't want to marry Leah. He wanted to marry Rachel. But because Jacob was a trickster, his uncle tricked him into marrying the firstborn, which was Leah, which she wasn't as attractive as Rachel apparently. And Jacob worked for his uncle for 7 years, and he was deceived, and he wound up marrying Leah instead of Rachel. And Uncle Laban told him that he has to work 7 more years, so that's 14 years total to marry to Rachel. And as people say, as a man, if he sees a wife, someone that he wants to marry, he's going to do whatever he has to do to get her. So this is one of those examples where Jacob wanted a wife, he wanted Rachel, and he was going to do whatever he had to do to get her, and he was willing to work for 14 years to get her. Even though he was married to Leah, making babies with Leah, that's where the other 10 tribes come from. But I don't want to get ahead of myself, but that's where the other 10 come from. So anyway, let me see where I was at. So he tricked him into marrying Leah, where Jacob had wanted to marry Rachel. The deceiver had become the deceived. In the end, Jacob married both sisters, Genesis 29:15-30. Having multiple wives was a common practice in the ancient world. Leah and Rachel competed for their husband's affection by having as many children as they possibly could. 12 sons and 1 daughter in total. They even gave their slave woman, I'm up here now, okay? They even gave their slave women to their husband to have children with them. Let me see. They even gave their slave women to their husbands to have children with them, much like Sarah and done with Hagar 2 generations earlier. Now, Sarah, just like Rachel, wasn't able to have children for many, many, many years, as you see here. That's what they're talking about. Like Sarah had done with Hagar. Now, when Sarah was married to Abraham, she couldn't have children either. She eventually had children, but Hagar, because Sarah was so old, she figured that she wasn't going to be able to have children, so she suggested Hagar sleep with her husband, and she wound up having a baby, and the baby's name is Ishmael. So that's the story of Sarah and Abraham and Rachel and Jacob, because Rachel didn't have children right away. Okay, Leah had 10. I think she had 10 sons. Yeah, she had 10 sons before Rachel had 1. So that's the reason why. That's the reason why she was kind of upset in competing, and Leah was making fun of Rachel because she's the prettiest, but she was sleeping with her husband when she married first and had 10 children before she had 1. So they was always fighting, in there. So Genesis 29, 30, 31, and 30 and 24 will explain to you about Sarah and with Jacob and Rachel. So this is just a prelude to where we are today and how we got to where we are. So I'm here now. So there were, however, times when this family turned toward God and God turned toward them. Jacob received an amazing glimpse into the heavenly realm, a dream of stairways to heaven. The Lord reassured Jacob that the promise made to his grandfather, which was Abraham, would be fulfilled. Awestruck, Jacob declared, how awesome is this place? The Lord would be my God. That's in Genesis 28:10-12. After 20 years of estrangement with his brother, Now remember, Jacob had to flee because Esau was going to kill him because he took the blood. Now his mother tricked him, but Jacob was grown. He was old enough to know better, but he wanted the blessing. But Esau didn't want it. A lot of people don't want. A lot of people, even today, they don't want. They want what you have, even though they have the access to get it, but they don't really want it until you want it. And so that's what I believe what happened here. But anyway, so Jacob had to flee because Esau was going to kill him. So his mother told him send him off, and he had to find his own way. That's how he wound up getting married and having two wives, and that's where the birth of the 12 tribes has come from. So let me continue on. So how awesome is this place? The Lord will be my God. Genesis 28:10-12. After 20 years of estrangement from his brother Esau, Jacob returned to Canaan and encountered Esau. Fearing for his life, Jacob humbled himself and prayed for God to protect him. Much to Jacob's surprise, Esau did not take revenge, but instead embraced and forgave Jacob. That's in Genesis 32:1-33 in chapter 4. The Lord renewed his covenant promises of blessings with the family despite their repeating failings. Genesis 26:3-5 and Genesis 28:13-15. God chose to work his will through their broken lives, rescuing them from certain doom when their lies and foolishness got them in trouble. So Joseph is going to wind up in Egypt. Now, who is Joseph? Joseph was the firstborn of Rachel and Jacob. So that's where Joseph comes from. I know it's not saying it on here, but if you read the story, Genesis 35-70, Genesis chapter 37 through chapter 50 will tell you the story of Joseph from the beginning. So up against the backdrop of this flawed family, the story of Joseph stands out. The book of Genesis devotes 13 chapters, now about 1/4 of the book, to the story of Joseph. I'm down here reading now. Okay, this story provides us with an example of a young man from an unstable family to those who rely on God when so much of his future seemed hopeless. Joseph's older brother resented him. Now, Jacob had two sons. One name was Joseph, and one name, the last one was Benjamin. So those are the two children that Jacob had with Rachel, and Leah had the other 10 tribes, the other 10 sons, and one daughter. So there's not 13 tribes because the tribes apparently follow the seed of the man. So that's the reason why there's 12 tribes, although there's 13 children. So Joseph's older brother, just let me let you know I'm up here on top. So hopefully you can follow through. So Joseph's older brother resented him as biological son of Rachel and wife Jacob loved most. Joseph was favored by his father. Now, if you read the story, you'll see that when Isaac favored his son, he favored. Let me see. He favored Esau, and his Rebecca favored Jacob. So now Jacob's doing the same thing with Joseph and Benjamin, as you're gonna find when you read the stories. This is 37 through chapter 50. It's a beautiful story. If you take time to read it, you can see how it ends, and it ends. It's just a beautiful story. So take the time to read it. I think you'll enjoy it also. God also gave. I'm up here now. God also gave Joseph special dreams, which Joseph wisely relayed to his brothers. His brothers understood Joseph's dreams to mean that one day, when they would all bow down to him, their little brother, Joseph's brothers, were determined to make sure it would never happen. Now, what's happening here is God blessed Joseph to be able to have dreams. So one day Joseph had a dream. Now, Joseph's the youngest, but he has a brother named Benjamin, was younger than Joseph, but Joseph was younger than all the 10 other brothers that he had. So it says here, God gave Joseph special dreams, which Joseph unwisely relayed to his brothers. His brothers understood Joseph's dreams to mean that one day they all would bow down to him, their little brother. Joseph's brothers were determined to make sure that would never happen. So they sold him to slave traders. and told their father that Joseph has been killed by a wild animal. I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but when um, Joseph, now I remember Joseph was the favorite of Jacob because that was his firstborn with the wife he loved, which was Rachel. So that was the firstborn. So his father made him a coat of many colors, and so the other brothers were seen to be jealous, and I don't know why they would be, but they seemed to be jealous. There was 10 other brothers before Joseph, but they were jealous of Joseph because he was the youngest. I guess he was the cutest, whatever. I don't know, but they were jealous of him. And his father made him a coat of many colors. But after Joseph told the dream to his brothers, with him being the youngest, that was before Benjamin was born. They were jealous and they said that would never happen. And what was supposed to happen was God showed him a dream that they were going to rule. He was going to rule over his brothers. His brothers said that's not going to happen. We're going to make sure it doesn't happen because you're the youngest. We're older than you. We're not going to follow you nowhere. So what they did was they sold him to slave traders, pretty much like they did us. And that's how we wound up over here in America. But that's another story for another day. They sold him to slave traders and told their father that Joseph had been killed by a wild animal. Okay, so I'm going to keep on going, and I'm not going to read everything, but I'm going to just read this part right here. As a slave in Egypt, Joseph had no connection, no money, no status, and no protection from harm. But he had one person on his side. The Lord was with Joseph. That's in Genesis 39, 2, 3, and Joseph 21 and 23. That made all the difference to Joseph. That made all the difference. Joseph didn't just survive in the foreign land. He thrived. He was put in charge of the whole household of Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officers. So even though his brother sold him into slavery, to slave traders, of course, he had nobody. He felt he didn't have anyone, but he knew he had the favor of the Most High. And because he had the favor of the Most High, God made him a Pharaoh himself, of Potiphar. Okay, so let me go on because I don't want to read too much about Joseph because this is not about Joseph. But I wanted to let you know how they wound up in Egypt in the first place. So let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna come down. Okay, see, it says right here. Let me read this real quick. I'm right here. So it says, but in the end, he stopped the deception, which he's talking about the Most High, revealed who he really was, and forgave his brothers entirely. This is where they're summing up the story basically. So I know I said read Genesis 13 through 50, those chapters, but right here is summing up what happened in the end. It said, but in the end, he stopped the deception, revealed who he really was, and forgave his brothers entirely. Joseph understood that God was a bigger plan that would succeed in spite of human sinfulness. He declared that to his brothers, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for my good, to accomplish what is now being done, saving of many lives. That was in Genesis 50. That was the end. That was the last chapter. And what happened in the last chapter is they sold Joseph into slavery. He was found and he was brought over to Potiphar. He was put in prison. And those boys went back to their father, which is named Jacob, went back to his father and told him that he was killed. So his father was devastated, and because that was his favorite, so he was devastated. But as you can see up here, they wound up coming back here. But I'm not going to spoil the story. You need to read it for yourself, and I think you really enjoy it. So this part of the biblical story and the story of Genesis ends with Pharaoh's chosen family living in Egypt. Jacob and his family had migrated to Egypt to escape famine. Now they came from Canaan. His family came from Canaan to Egypt, down to Egypt. And they migrated to Egypt to escape the famine. Though they grew in number, now when they came to Egypt, there was only 79 total from all the brothers, the father. They all had children and grandchildren. So we went from 10 see, 10 brothers, 11 brothers, the mother and father. So they all wind up having 79 people coming to Egypt in all, which you'll find that out when you read the story. They grew in numbers as God's covenant said they would. They were far from the land that God had promised. We read in later chapter that Genesis that Joseph had made a new home for himself in Egypt. He wanted to be buried in the promised land. Genesis 50 to 25. This demonstrated Joseph's trust that God would be faithful to fulfill the promises he made so many years earlier to Abraham. It's a good story, man. I'm telling you, you need to read it. So here we have the genealogy of Abraham's family and the journey of the patriarchs. Now, the journey of the patriarchs, you'll see where they went from Goshen, and you see Canaan, Mesopotamia. This is the where they started off from Ur and wound up in Haran, and they wound up down here. God told them to move. That's for Abraham. God had Abraham move from Ur all the way to Haran and from down to Canaan. Okay, so then when Joseph and his family, when Joseph's family came to Egypt, he let the Pharaoh know that was his family, because the Pharaoh didn't know. So because he was sold into slavery by his brothers, so he let the Pharaoh know that those were his family, and and the Pharaoh gave him the land up here in Canaan, which is called Goshen, which is called Ramesses, and you'll see later on as we conclude, maybe not today, but on the final chapter of this 3-part series, you'll see how it all comes together and how we get the answers that we're trying to determine now. But see, this is the genealogy of Abraham. Okay, and here I'm on this page here, so you're going to see Jacob and Israel. You're going to see where he had married Rachel and Bilhah and Leah and Zilpah, and you can see here where Jacob had which is Israel. I'm sorry, Jacob. God changed his name to Israel. Okay, but you saw it meant struggles. So you can see Rachel had her 2 sons, which was Jacob, which is Joseph and Benjamin, and then Joseph had Manasseh and Ephraim, and these are the 12 tribes, as you can see: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. Now the map right here, the journey of the patriarch, this map here is it's going to be the key. And I'm going to put it all together in my summary, because I'm going to compare this map to today's map. And then you'll see how things have changed, and you'll see how names changed and places changed. And that's one of the reasons why people don't know who they are or where they come from, because people have gone before us and make straight places crooked, and they change the names of different places, so you'll never know where you came from. And a perfect example of name changes is when we used to watch the movie called Roots. And in Roots, Kunta Kinte was beat until he confessed that his name was changed to Toby. He didn't want to say it. He knew what his name was, but they beat him damn near to death, to the point where he said Toby. So now his name was Kunta, so everybody knew him as that. So when someone changes your name, no one knows who you are later. No one knows where you came from. No one knows who you are. You know who you are, but that's it. As generations go by, people forget. You know where you came from, but now they changed the name. So now you're looking for a name on a map that doesn't exist anymore. So that's how we get lost and don't know where we came from. Some of them say they know, but to God be the glory. If they do, to God be the glory. Most people don't, and hopefully the community will be able to help us decipher, at least give us a locale of where we came from, and eliminate everything, the imposters, the people that want to imitate others. This community will eliminate that. So even if you may not know exactly, but you'll have an idea of what's true and what's not. That's the end goal, is straightening out the BS and giving you a direction on where to go. We don't. And studying is the methodology on how you're going to get to where you're going. You have to study, because you can listen to us. How you know what we're saying is true? All right, you gotta study and show yourself approved also. Okay, everybody got to put their own, their own work in. You got to put the work in, at least for yourself. Okay, the redeemed people from Egypt in the wilderness, 1800 to 1400 BC. Moses in the Exodus, wilderness wandering, feasting of Israel, and the Ark of the Covenant. So this is part of the book I was showing you earlier. So I'm not going to read this. I'm just going to let you see um, some of the things that are going on in this book. And we're talking about Moses in the Exodus. The book of Moses opens with the descendants of Jacob, called Hebrews, or Israelites, grown numerously in the land of Egypt for many years. God had blessed them. Go up here. I'm back up here now. God had blessed them, but the Egyptian rulers saw their success as a threat and became suspicious. Then a new king, to whom Joseph meant nothing, came to power in Egypt. Look, he said unto his people, the Israelites have become too numerous for us. So what happens is, now for what they're saying, and according to what the scriptures say, is that when Jacob's brothers and their family came, there was 79 people, and now they're growing and growing and growing. So that means they're having relations with the Egyptians, and they're growing in numbers and numbers and numbers and numbers and numbers. And apparently they got more Hebrews at that time, if you want to call them Hebrews or Israelites. That's what the Bible's calling them. So they grew so far in numbers, there was more Hebrews than there were anybody else. So this is the reason why it says, then a new king, to whom Joseph meant nothing, came in power to Egypt. Look, he said to the people, the Israelites have become too numerous for us. Come, we must deal truly with them, or they will become even more numerous, and if war breaks out, we'll join our enemies. Fight against us and leave the country. So they had put masters over them to oppress them with forced labor. So that's Exodus 1, 8 through 11. So you can see here, they wanted to put, because there were so many of them, they figured they'll control them by oppressing them and enslaving them. So that's what they did here. Made them do forced labor. So you can see that's where we are today. Now we're going to start talking about the date of the Exodus. So I want to give you a little bit of history about how they wound up in Egypt in the first place. So how they wound up in Egypt, how they wound up with so many people, is because when it came through the famine, they were famine last for 7 years. After the second year, they ran out of food, and they wound up coming to Egypt, where they found someone that Pharaoh put over Egypt. Come to find out, it was their brother Joseph, the one they said died or killed, but it's actually the one they sold into slavery. So now everybody is in Egypt, and now there's too many of them. So now they're going to enslave them. Now, they wasn't slaves before they got to Egypt, so they came freely. I'm not going to get into it too much of that, because I want to conclude on that in my summary. So let me just move on. So I don't want to go too much in that. But today's topic is to try to decipher if Moses and Akhenaten is one and the same. Okay, so we talk about the date of the Exodus. And this is where this chart comes in at. This chart right here. This is the chronology of the 18 and 19 dynasty. Okay, so remember where we are now. So the date of the Exodus, dating of the Exodus event is very difficult and highly debated. There are two main options: a high date, which is the 1446, and a low date, which is 1290 BC. So we got the 1446 BC. So let's go see what happened in 14. Let me see what the number is. 1446 BC. So 1446 BC. So let's go over to the chart here. 1446. So we're talking about Moses the third. Now you see, now he was there for 54 years. If that's the right time frame, that's the time frame of the 40 years. The yeah, the 40 years they roamed all over the place. Let's see. Okay, if it's the low date, which is 1290 BC, and we go here, we're looking at Ramesses II, which ruled for 67 years. Let me do that again. The date of the Exodus. Dating of the Exodus event was very difficult and highly debated. There are two main options: a high date of 1446 and a low date of 1290. Evidence of the high date of 1446. 1 Kings 6:1 states that the Exodus happened 480 years before Solomon's 40th year, 966 BC. Working backward, this dates the Exodus to 1446 BC. 1446 BC, did we see 1446 BC? Did we see that Moses III was the Pharaoh? The Pharaoh at that time. So if he's the Pharaoh at that time, that's the Pharaoh that let me go to the book. You see the 10 plagues? Let me read this. Exodus 12:12 states that God's judgment through the 10th plague came upon all the gods of Egypt. See also Numbers 33:44. The archaeologists are not certain about which particular deities were being mentioned in Egypt during the time of the Exodus. Much of the information about Egyptian gods actually comes from a different time and location in Egyptian history. Despite this uncertainty, it's all beneficial to consider possible connections between the plagues and the Egyptian deities, since through the plagues, God was revealing all his power over all things. So, when you listen to the scriptures, when it talks about God's hardening the heart of Pharaoh, they never said who. They never said which one. They never said which. They could have done it, but they never said which one. They could have said who was it? I guess this is the quiz. They could have said Moses. They could have said Amenhotep. They could have said it. They could have said whoever it was said. But now here we are, hundreds of years later, and we got to put the pieces together. And they could have been done a long time ago. But if they don't want you to know who you are, of course they're going to change the name, and that's why we're here today, because they changed the name. Anyway, let's keep moving. In Judges 11:26, Jephthah, around 1100 BC, claimed that Israel had been in Canaan for 300 years, adding 40 years to the wilderness journey. This places the Exodus around 1440 BC. It's still in 1440 BC. We're still talking about 1440 BC. We're still talking about Moses III. Okay, so we're still talking about the same individual. The Aramana letters, tablets around 1400 BC, are correspondence written between Egyptian officials and representatives of Canaan. This is where I am right here, so just in case you want to follow. These letters speak of periods of chaos in Canaan, which could be Joshua's conquest 40 years after the Exodus. The letters also make mention of a group referred to Akhenaten as the Heperu. Social outcasts, nomad slaves, or migrant workers, possible the Israelites at that time. Okay. They're trying to give you a timeline. Many people are trying to figure this out. The timeline. Now, hold on, let me go back real quick. Let's see, 1400 BC. 1400 BC. So we're looking at the Pharaoh that was there for 1400 BC. That's right where Moses was about to leave, because Amenhotep III, which is Akhenaten's father, came in at 1405 to 1337. So in the 1400, we were still talking about 1400, we were talking about Moses the fourth. 1400. Yeah, we're still talking about Tutmosis the fourth around that time frame. Okay, so we were going to go to the evidence of the low date. Now the low date is 1290 BC. No references to Israel as a people have been discovered outside of the Bible. Now this is one thing Chris always talked about on Mob Forever. He always says Israelites don't exist outside of the Bible. They only exist when you open up the Bible. Outside of that, there's no evidence of them even existing. So I'm gonna read that again. Evidence for the low date was 1290 BC. No references to Israel as a people have been discovered outside the Bible prior to the Murder Path Murder Patah Steel. Let's look that up real quick. Murder Patah Steel. I think that's a let me see. Murder Patah Steel. Might have to go to Wikipedia. Let me see. I go to Wikipedia. If you have ever any questions about anything, just look it up so you know for yourself. You won't be no misunderstandings on what um or who Myrna. Here is here it is here. This is one of the plates. The Myrna Patah steel, also known as the Israel steel or the victory steel of Myrna Patah. A pharaoh of ancient Egypt who reigned from 1213 to 1203, discovered by founders of Puri of Thebes. So 1213 to 1203. 1213. That's way beyond the 19th dynasty. So there's no references of the Israelites outside the Bible. The cities that the Bible says the Hebrews built while in Egypt, Pithom and Ramesses, and that's in Exodus 1 through 11, were completed by Ramesses II in 1304 to 1237. 1304, 1304. That was during the 19th dynasty when King Seti was ruling. Let me see these numbers again. 1304 to 1237. 1304 to 1237. Yeah, that was during King Seti's reign. Okay. Biblical dating from the understanding as symbolic. So the 480 years mentioned in 1 Kings 6 and 1 is a period of 12 generations, 40 years per generation. Biblical dates may also exaggerate the generalized. Let me read that over. Biblical dates may also be exaggerated or generalized, such as Jephthah's claim of 300 years, as in Judges 12, 11, 26. So we see that the Exodus took place. Let me. I don't want to go too far over that. Okay, so we're looking at 1446 through 1290, and you get to find out who the Pharaoh was that was in the land when Moses supposedly had delivered the children out of Egypt. Moses was the one, apparently, if the time is right. If it's 1290, as they say on the low side, 1290 on the low side, then of course 1290. I don't know, my page is stuck. Page is stuck. I don't know what's going on. It's stuck. Okay, so anyway, let me go over here. I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry about that. My page is getting stuck. Here, I just wanted to show the journey of exile and return from Goshen to Canaan. And see, when I do my last video, it's gonna put all this together, the Promised Land. And no, I don't think anyone really thought. I'm just gonna say this: Canaan seems to be the place, which I don't understand why. That seems to be the Promised Land, but Canaan was a place where everyone didn't want to be. So I don't know how they wound up being the Promised Land. This is just another map here with Joshua's route. I think it's the last page. Now I do want to go to one more. Now this is Horemheb. Horemheb, also spelled Horemheb, or Horemheb, was the last pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. Let me go back over here real quick. The last pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. Now, if we're talking about the high side of let me go back over here, because I want to go back to this timeline real quick. As you can see, where it talks about Amenhotep II. Okay, there. The dream still 14 BC indicates that Moses IV was not the firstborn legal heir of the throne, hinting at the idea that the firstborn son of Amenhotep II had died. Okay, so if we're looking at 1290 BC, you're going to find that Horemheb, it starts moving now. Horemheb here, as you can see here, he was considered the pharaoh of oppression. So I really believe that this was the pharaoh that the Lord had to deal with to get his people out of Egypt. Because it's still within the time frame of the Israelites being in Egypt, the plagues, the killings of the firstborn boys. Moses, he was there. He's considered the pharaoh of oppression. Now today I was listening to one of the lives on Maha Forever, and they were talking about how Chris was saying that people are really putting a lot of stock into the pharaohs, like they were so perfect. But this pharaoh here was known for being oppressive. He was known. I mean, you had slaves, so they couldn't been all. I don't understand why people thinking that all the Egyptians, all the pharaohs were so nice and polite and so concerned. They had slaves too. And this one right here, no matter what people say, if this is the one that was written about in the Bible, he was the one that God had to put the 10 plagues on because he wouldn't let the people go. Now, again, we were talking about Moses and Akhenaten being one and the same. We don't really know if the people were Hebrews or not. I mean, that's what they say, but remember, they always change the names. They always change the names, and from what I've been reading in this book, the other two books I was showing you, they weren't Hebrews. Hebrews is what they say, but they changed the name, so you don't really know. But I think they were named something else, and I'm gonna prove it on my summary. So yeah, this is the pharaoh here that let's see. Horemheb also spelled Horemheb or Haremheb is Horus in the Jubilation. This was the last pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. And the 18th dynasty lasted from 1550 to 1295 BC. He ruled at least 14 years between 1319 BC and 1292 BC. So I'm trying to find where they're saying he was the pharaoh of. He was the pharaoh of tribulation. He was the one that was putting it on people, you know. Horemheb says Horemheb Horus is infestible. Was the last pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, but can also be considered as the founder of the 19th dynasty. I guess you could say that because the times run together. He rose from an obscure background to serve up four kings of Egypt: Akhenaten, Simkari, Tutankhamun, and I, before becoming pharaoh of ancient Egypt on his own right. Okay, so here it is right here. It says right here. It says Horemheb Exodus Pharaoh. So that's what I'm saying. Um, Pharaoh Akhenaten, formerly Amenhotep IV, in 1335 BCE, Akhenaten died, and Moses, at age 56, returned to Europe. Europe. I'm sleepy, Lord. Returned to Egypt. He found Egypt in chaos and rebelled due to the outrage by the priests and their what is that? I don't know that word, over the move from polytheism, because there was polytheism meaning serving more than one God. During the 15 years Moses lived among the Hebrews, by the age of 7, he became their de facto leader. So he came back. But see, Akhenaten had died. And Hiram had, I believe, to me, from what I've been reading, he is the Pharaoh that the Lord had to put the whip on to let the people go. That's Horemheb. He was the last Pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, when the time frame is right. And he's also the founder of the 19th dynasty. So, yeah, he's the guy that. Let me see. The reign of Horemheb, first actions on the throne. One of the first things Horemheb did upon coming to the throne was destroy the artistic legacy of both A and Neckerman, defacing the monuments or scriptures in which they appeared. Two problems with that chronology of Horemheb's reign. I don't want to get too far into that because I didn't read that, so I didn't study that part. It says Horemheb also died without having surviving children, having appointed his razor Paramasu as his heir. And this advisor, ascended the throne in 1292 BC as Ramesses I and was the first pharaoh of the 19th dynasty. Now, remember the names when we get back into the summary. Remember the names Ramesses, because Ramesses, Goshen, and Canaan is almost the same place. Yep, and we're gonna prove it. Now see, it has Goshen up here, but I have another map that has Ramesses on it, and I think that's because as time went on, they were changing the names, So all these names are pretty much not even the same anymore now. These years, hundreds of years later, and Esau has went in and changed the name, so nobody knows what, where, when, or why. So Goshen, Canaan, Nemes, and Ramesses is the location here in Canaan. Which I don't understand why Canaan would be the promised land when Jacob's family left Canaan. Abraham left Canaan. They all left that place because it was like Babylon. It was like Sodom. Everything goes there, And why would God send them back to the place where you can be destroyed? I don't get it, but we're gonna solve it. We're gonna solve it in the next in the conclusion. Yeah, because we're gonna solve it. At least my perspective it is. And here again is the resources of where I got my information from and what I've been studying. So we're going to conclude this video for today. I really hope you got something out of it. I wanted to bring some receipts. I wanted to bring a little bit of dialogue and also read the scriptures so we can have some idea of why we are drawing this conclusion. And bringing Joseph into it, you can see, because they were in Canaan. They were in Canaan in the first place. They were there and they came to Egypt because of there was a famine. So we wanted to start at the beginning, so when we conclude next time, or next week, or maybe 2 weeks from now, when we conclude, we're going to tie it all together so you can have some idea of why we draw this conclusion between Akhenaten and Moses being one and the same. So I want to say thank you for stopping by. This is my second live. I'm going to put this video out, and I just hope that whoever comes by to see these videos gets a chance to see and study for yourself, because as I said earlier, and a lot of people are saying that we can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and hoping for different results. You see what's going on in America, all over the world, storms. God's judging this place. He's doing it for a reason, and people still serving other gods, and the ones they serve is not their own. When we came over here, we didn't know nothing about Jesus Christ. We didn't know nothing about him. And that Bible was the first thing they made us read. We didn't know anything about it. We had no clue. We didn't know anything about who he was. But I'm excited because learning about who we are and where we come from, it should be something that everyone wants to know. We can't keep status quo and staying with Esau and staying with his ways and what he thinks. You gotta choose ye this day who you gonna serve. I choose to serve the Most High. Choose ye this day. Study to show yourself approved. And get on these panels and learn. That's what I learned. I've been learning for years from SETI. I've been learning from my aunt Forever, Sarnetta, all those guys. I learned who about me from them. But I've been in this for years. And I got thousands of books. One book leads to another book, that leads to another book, that leads to another book. And most of my books are written in the early 1400s. Now, I have a lot of books, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. It's early 1900s. And the reason why I like reading those books is because you get to get a feeling of what they were thinking of, because that's when the foundation was being laid. So today you get the racist perspective, and black people ain't nothing, and so when you read those books, you just getting one man's perspective, or anal perspective. So you can't really, to me, and I do have books from the 2021st century. I do have some, but my base and my foundation is on the earlier traditions. And then when you do research and you get books, try to get the original edition, because the revised versions or revisions may not, most of the time do not have most of the information you need. If you keep searching, you'll find some of the encyclopedias from the early 15, 16, 1700s. Like I have a couple of them. And that's when you get the true definitions of black. You get the true definition of Israel. You get the true definitions, the unimpeded versions of the definitions that you're not going to get in these 20th, 21st century texts. So anyway, I don't want to make this video longer than it should be. So I want to say thank you anyway for stopping by. Take the time to study for yourself. Learn. If you have any questions, concerns, you can leave a message. You can send me an email, drop a comment, share the video, and we'll see you in the next video. Enjoy your day. Enjoy 2023. Make it your best year ever. In spite of everything that's going to be going on, stay spiritual and live intentional. Stay with the Most High. Because if you don't, you're not going to make it. Because it's going to get real deep. All praises.